If you've ever said to yourself, if my partner could just change blank, then our relationship would be so good. Or if they could just fix this aspect about them, whatever that blank is for you, you can fill it in your own mind there, then this video is for you, because today we're going to talk about how do you change your partner. Now, stick around because it actually might be a little bit different than you think. Hi, if you're new to this channel, my name is Tom Philp, and I'm a trauma-informed coach. I've been working for decades with couples and individuals to help them learn how to create a safe and secure relationship for themselves. Now, if you're new to this channel, be sure and hit the like button and the follow and comment below. Let us know the things that you want to hear or would like us to talk about. All right, let's dig in. We're going to talk about how to change your partner, but we're going to do it a little bit different way because we're going to talk about the system in which your relationship exists. And what that essentially means is that there are three components to every interaction between you and your partner. There's an input, there's a response, and there's an output. And what systems love to do is they love to thrive on patterns. And so oftentimes patterns will get rigid or will get solidified in a relationship. And so one of the laws of a system is that the pattern is greater or stronger than the individuals, meaning that our systems, especially our nervous systems, get used to responding a certain way. And every time that happens, then we have a certain input or a certain response that almost can predict an outcome in the relationship. And so we really want to look at how do we change our partner by learning how to change the system. Now, as I said, the system has three components. It has an input, it has a response, and it has an output. It also works on about three different laws, if you will. So the first law, as I've mentioned already, is that the pattern is greater or stronger than the individual. Maybe you've heard the term greater than the sum of the parts. And that's certainly true for systems. Systems can be sometimes greater than the different components that we put into them. Sometimes as coaches, we look at a relational system and what we see is the two individuals, and then we see the pattern in and of itself, the pattern that they get stuck in that causes sometimes so much hurt and pain for both individuals. And so one of the laws is that the pattern or the system is greater than the individual, greater than the sum of the parts. The second law is that it is made up of roles, meaning that both individuals can fall into very similar roles for themselves. For example, one of the roles might be a pursuer and the other might be an avoider role. Another type of role might be an overfunctioner and an underfunctioner role. One role might be a criticizer and a defender role. So one partner criticizes, the other partner feels like they constantly have to defend themselves. So there's all kinds of different roles that partners can take, and I could list off probably a dozen of them, but you get the idea. And when we start talking about especially an attachment relationship, some of the most common roles are pursuer and avoider. And you might have a combination of that. You might be in a relationship where you're a pursuer and your partner's a pursuer. And so what happens is this pattern sometimes plays out where you both will come in and get defensive very quickly. There'll be a big clash, there'll be fireworks, and then things calm down and you go back to normal. Or you might be in a relationship where you're more of an avoidance style, an avoider, and you're married to an avoider in terms of a partner. And so what happens there is things constantly get swept under the rug. You never really talk about the important things or resolve any kind of conflicts in the relationship because neither partner wants to deal with them. So those are just some examples of the roles. Finally, the third law that systems operate by is what's called homeostasis. Now, in homeostasis, all that means is that the system wants to go back to normal. It's constantly pushing to go back to normal, and whatever that normal is. Now, here's the thing that's really important to know about homeostasis. Your relationship can go back to normal even if it's painful, even if that relationship is not working, even if it's harmful or hurtful. There's still that pull in that pattern, in that system that wants to go back to normal, whatever that normal is that looks like for you in your relationship. So those are the three different laws that systems sort of are governed by. Now, the question is, if we can't change our partner, which I highly suggest you don't try, at least in terms directly trying to change them, if we can't change them directly, then how can we begin to change the system in which we operate, or the system in which our relationship works? Well, I've got two really good examples. The first one is, if you can change the system instead of changing your partner, start by changing yourself, your response. For example, if you're coming in really hot and worked up, if you're more of an anxious style in your attachment, and if you tend to get flooded and need connection immediately, that means that it's going to be very important for you to learn, how do I self-soothe? How do I calm myself down? How do I regulate myself first so that I change the input? Because if you come in softer, if you come in slower, then it's possible that your partner will have a different response to you. And as a result, you'll get a different output, meaning that your partner may be more likely to stay engaged in that conversation, to hear your feelings, to be able to empathize and validate with them, and to be able to stay emotionally connected and engaged with you longer, which ultimately is what you're hoping for anyway. And so that is one example of how to change the system. Change your response. Be less defensive. Regulate yourself more. Lose the sarcasm in moments that are uncomfortable for you, that never seems to help. Any of these kinds of examples can be really helpful about how do we change the system. Ultimately change our partner, because what we do is we force them to respond differently to us because we are responding differently. And then the second way to really change this system is to be able to set boundaries for yourself. Not boundaries where you're shutting out your partner. I'm not talking about stonewalling. What I'm talking about is, how can you more consistently lead from the heart, from your own wants and needs, your own attachment needs, that can inform how you show up in this relationship and how you can communicate more of your wants and needs to your partner. When you set boundaries that way, then again, that forces your partner to respond differently. So one of the ways that we can actually change our partner is not by directly trying to change them. If you would just work on this, then our relationship would be so much better, because that's going to come across as attacking, criticizing, blaming, maybe shaming them in some way, but it's less likely that they're going to be willing to hear you and go, oh, you're right, I really do need to work on that aspect of my personality. I'll jump on that immediately. More often what they're going to do is they're going to get defensive. And they might turn it around. Well, you need to work on this and you need to work on that. And then here we go. That pattern is going to take off, and it's going to be rigid, and it's going to feel stuck. And you're going to go back to exactly what you all have gotten before. So the way we want to change our partner is by trying to change the system, trying to have a different input that forces a different response that will get us a different outcome.